So welcome to another episode of the Data Standard podcast experience. And today I'm really excited. I've got Alessandro Pregnolato with me. He is the VP of Data at Preply. And we're going to be diving into kind of his experiences, especially running with business intelligence, with big data, and running teams. And I'm really excited to have you here today, Alessandro. So welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Very excited to be here as well.
Fantastic. So I think it would be helpful. It's always fantastic to have a European on the show. Love to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to Preply, where you are today.
Okay, 30 years in 5 minutes. I'm going to try that. I grew up in Italy, in Milan. I grew up among computers. When I was a kid, play with it, a lot of video games, a lot of coding. I was playing BASIC when I was 8. That was my passion. I stuck to that through college until I was like 18. And that's when I got curious for other things. And so I took a different turn on my study communications, study like public relations and all sorts of things. And then eventually I fell into data by chance, simply because I got a job in sales and distribution. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of Excel. And it turned out that I really like it. For some reason that I ignored, I turned out to be pretty good at it. Back in the day, most reporting was done manually. They had an army of people putting reports together. And in short, after a few weeks, I wanted to hang myself. Because they would make me build the same report over and over and over. And so I started to automate everything with macros and Visual Basic, because it was the year 2000 and BI wasn't really there. I did that until 2005, and since it was working out well, I turned myself into like a reporting specialist / BI, and I was automating reports for the entire company by the time I left. I took a break a couple of years to pursue a dream as a professional musician.
Wow, okay.
And yes, I spent some time in the States actually touring with an Irish rock band. That was like 15 years ago. And after I was done with that, I moved to Spain. And as I was like going back to reality and going back into the working space, I found out that this new thing called BI was born, and there was tools such as Business Object and MicroStrategy were like doing everything that I was doing manually, but they were doing it like a much bigger scale. Got interested in it, so I tried to find any way to get into it. Eventually ended up selling my soul to the devil into a consultancy company. And after that, it was like 5 years of sweat and 60 hours weeks and suit and ties in banks, insurances, a horrible place like that. It was horrible, but I did learn the job. And that's how in 2012, I got out of there. I took all my suits and I went to charity shop and I dumped all of them as I was in my first startup, and I swore that I would never go back. And ever since, I've been in several companies. I've been in Softonic, that back in the day here in Spain was quite a big deal. I've been at King for a year. I worked as a data scientist over there. And then eventually I joined a small startup called Typeform, who were just in the in a moment in which they were scaling up. And they were silly enough to put me in charge of their analytics and have me to build their team. I did that over the following 4 years. I scaled the team from 0 to over 20 people, and we had a BI area, business analytics, product analytics, and machine learning. And then a few years later, Typeform went through many changes that I didn't really like. So I decided to start over again. I did the same at a company called Marfil in ad tech. That was extremely complex from a technical standpoint, probably the most complex BI project I've ever done. When that was done, I got approached by Preply. And Preply really caught my attention as being like a super interesting company. What we have here is like two sides of it. We are a marketplace. So we have like real economics, and we put in touch demand and supply, in our case, like students and tutors. So we have the nice economics and dynamics of the marketplace that make from some very nice problems. But at the same time, we built an end-to-end learning environment for like the learning experience to take place. and this translates into a complex product. And so like there's really a lot of interesting problems there as well. I joined probably 6 months ago. We are the typical scale-up company who got quite a long way on their own, but then they realized that data overall is not quite there. And so they decide to hire a VP in to take it to the next level.
Okay. So fantastic. I mean, there's so many questions and so many cool experiences here. I want to go back to your Marfield time, because you said that was one of the most complex business intelligence problems that you've kind of solved in your career. Can you describe that problem and kind of how you approached it?
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Well, Marfield is an ad tech company and a very peculiar one, but they do mostly programmatic buying. And they process 4.5 billion ad impressions per month as per 3 years ago, which made for a huge amount of data. And also their margin were really, really thin. So they had to do everything on a shoestring. As I joined, what I realized is that at that scale, the normal data sources that you normally use are not available. I mean, if we wanted to use Google Analytics, that would probably cost us several million per year.
Yep.
Because the amount of page views that we move is insane. And so they did quite a great job at finding very creative ways to obtain these data from multiple sources, but of course, the way the data we were obtaining was far from perfect, and especially there was a completely incoherent and not consolidated. So there was a big chunk of the problem was to manage to obtain and process the huge amount of data and to reorganize it and fill in all the gaps and, creating a data warehouse that was good enough to be exploited. That was already a big challenge in itself. And then we had to do that on a very limited budget as well. So couldn't use the top of the range tools or anything, although we got creative with it, and we managed to do pretty good things. And then there was the functional complexity. That's when it became even more interesting. The technical side of things. In the end, we managed ways around it. It wasn't really that complex, as well because the company counted with a huge amount of expertise. But what was really difficult was that the data sources, the data warehouse that we built, although data was good quality and well organized, it was just required such a huge amount of knowledge to know all the different hundreds, thousands of corner cases, exceptions, and business rules that it was basically impossible for anybody but a few experts to exploit that data. And this created your typical bottleneck situation in which you have people across the business, accounting with a few poor analysts to answer all their questions. And then, of course, this saturates immediately with burned out analysts on one side and, very disgruntled users on the other who they see the request going into a backlog and, they never get their answers back. The way we resolve this is by building a really solid self-service layer. And, in some cases, you can manage to resolve some of the complexity in the data warehouse itself. In Marfield, it was very difficult. So we needed to put another layer in. After exploring many technology, we decided to go for Looker. I am a massive Looker fan ever since. I think it's a spectacular product because what it does is allows you to centralize and model all this knowledge required to exploit the data into their logical model. So that basically all this complexity is resolved previously once and for all. And only then users can, exploit this data. But at that point, for them, it's simply drag and drop, and they don't really need to know everything that needed to be done. Even so, the Looker implementation in this case was very complex because we had, we wanted to exploit web visits. We had 4 different types of web visits. They're coming from different sources, a different level of aggregation, and each one of them was suitable for a different use. And on the other hand, we would have the same for revenue. 4 or 5 different sources for revenue, each one of them with gaps and aggregated at different levels, each one of them suitable for a use case. And you would only be able to cross certain visits with certain revenue, you know?
Yep.
So eventually we find a way to do that. We built some constructs called perspectives, and based from the user perspective, based on the problem that you wanted to resolve, we will build this experience for them in which they could only exploit the data that makes sense, only cross the data in a way that made sense.
Yep. I love that example. Thinking about all these different teams you've been on where you've had to build out, right? You've had to grow a business intelligence team, or you've even had some machine learning engineers. I'd like to understand from you, best practices. You come into a new organization, there's going to be the company's going to scale and it's going to add employees. How do you, what's the process you go through to think about who do I need on my team? How quickly do I add folks? What are the different types of roles and specializations I need? How do you think through that that building process?
Okay, well, I would say that there are two sides of it. And one is the practical and pragmatic side of things, and the other one is more philosophical, so to speak. Mm-hmm. As far as the practical side of things goes, I think that by now we should all know what makes a data department and what role. There is no excuse. So I wouldn't really reinvent the wheel and inventing, new roles and positions. We're going to need data scientists, we're going to need business analysts, we're going to need BI people, we're going to need data engineers, so the roles were pretty clear. Mm-hmm. What I would only recommend, in terms of execution, will be starting small, because in an MVP fashion, in an agile fashion, because in scale up, things move very, very quickly. And so the picture of what you need at any given point in time can change just as quickly. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, I would, if possible, try to hire one person at a time. Mm-hmm. What I did there is simply starting with the basics. I don't know if you're familiar with the pyramid of data needs, that you see sometimes.
Please explain it for the listeners.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's simply kind of like a Maslow pyramid for data, concept of data. You need to start with the basic, with your single source of truth, with data warehousing and all the data in one place and consistency. And then you have to resolve the problem of data accessibility, that in my opinion is the most important thing. And then only then you can focus about doing really advanced analytics, and the tip of the iceberg would be machine learning and AI.
Yep.
And, everybody got so excited about machine learning and AI that during many years they thought that they could just simply reverse the pyramid and start up. And that is basically a fantastic recipe to screw it up. And I'm actually pleased for that, because I made a lot of money out of consultancy from company who did that. And then they were so desperate and they were calling me to try and fix things. But in my case, since I come from that profile, my first approach would be okay, let me get the data straight. There wasn't really a centralized place, so let's create this centralized place. So you're going to need some BI people to do that, at least people who are good at modeling, people who are good at SQL and at building pipelines, which is nowadays very, very difficult. Because again, everybody got excited about data science, machine learning. So I got a list of hundreds of machine learning applicants that I don't really know what to do with them. But yes, if I have to find a person who can model data in a data warehouse, I'm having a very, very hard time. Fortunately, that's where my expertise comes from. So normally I can get good developers or good data scientists and try to get them to evolve into this role. Once that was in place, the next layer would be analytics people. And yet again, analytics people, they come in very shapes and forms. So to me, the key there is diversity. Mm-hmm. So one big mistake that I see is that many people have the expectation of hiring a data person, a data scientist, and then this data scientist to be reasonably good and reasonably proficient across the entire scope of analytics. And that's never going to happen.
Unrealistic. It's not realistic, right?
It is not realistic. There are people who are going to be very good at building models, and other people are going to be very good at doing performance analytics, and other people are going to be very good at doing product analytics. But you're never going to find a person.
Yeah.
That was a bit the expectation that I was finding in companies. No, we need a data scientist. Why? Because we're going to have analytics. No, you're not need a data scientist. You need a team. And this team, the most diverse, the best. Because then if you look for people who are really eager to learn and they have a cooperative attitude and maybe you manage to build a certain vibe in the team, so that there is cooperation and there is a nice vibe going on, and that we're gonna learn from each other and complement each other. And so this allows you to address all this complexity by leveraging diversity, which is like a very, very powerful tool.
Love it. So I think that's a great way to kind of approach it. I'm curious to hear from you how you think in the next kind of 3 to 4 years this will evolve in terms of, you talked about kind of the different roles, right? The BI and the business analyst, and then the machine learning engineer and the data scientist. And how do you think, are those kind of roles kind of will continue as such, or do you think some of these roles will be kind of commoditized out or automated out? Like, what do you think it will look like? And if we have this discussion in 3 years, what will have changed, if anything?
That is such a very good question. I would say that there are going to be some roles that are going to be commoditized, and they have been like the typical data monkey role, fortunately, is going to disappear at some point, at least among those companies who are willing to introduce a minimum degree of modernity in the way they do things.
Yeah.
Up until now, there was this idea, this data wrangler, poor guy, that you're going to ask them the report and they're going to cross-access all day to produce these reports of visualization and then paste them in PowerPoint and then give them to the executives so that they can look good. I think that kind of thing nowadays is going to be gone, replaced by more and more self-service tools. Mm-hmm. But these self-service tools need to be true self-service. This is why, what happened that is super interesting, if you want, is that we had those tools. We had them 15 years ago. MicroStrategy, Business Object, and that generation of BI tools, what they were doing were like writing SQL for you based on the model that you were creating underneath.
Yeah.
And so that allowed for really self-serve analytics, because you didn't have somebody to produce a dashboard for you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the problem is that databases were slow back then. And when big data arrived, they were too slow. But even before big data, when ClickView and Tableau came in to get into the game, they put everything in memory. So it felt, oh, wow, this is very quick now. And everybody went for that. Right. But nobody understood what the real trade-off behind it, which was that now you need a BI guy who's going to have to build a dashboard for every single visualization that you want. And before you're going to cover the totality of what you have to cover, then probably you need 50 dashboards. Each one of them is going to take a month to produce. Right. And then, and each one of them needs to maintain. So you end up with you replaced your army of data monkey for an army of BI analysts, and you're back to square one. You still have the bottom, right?
Yep.
Now the databases have caught up. Finally,
sure.
They got distributed. We are opening this thing back. So, in my opinion, what's going to happen is an explosion of truly self-serve analytics. This will remove all this kind of manual data processing and all of that. So, the role of the data person would be more the one of a thought partner who will sit together with the business users and get them to ask the right questions and have them together as a thought partner, really.
Right. And that self-service. So if you're on the side of the business, is that going to be, as an analyst, will you still need to know SQL, or is that something where these will be no code kind of dropping,
Oh yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Basically, if we take the current example, what we are doing at Preply, what we did at Marfil, we are using Looker. It's working very well. And so, yes, we do have some specialists who need to work and iterate on the logical model.
Yep.
But once we've done that, Everything else is pretty much drag and drop. And
Got
so
it.
you can actually explore data autonomously.
Yep.
This removes, the huge bulk of this repetitive, boring data pulling and monkey work.
Yep.
So we still have the analysts. Analysts are gonna have to professionalize a lot more. I'm using analyst as a generic term that encompasses what we call data analyst, product analyst, business analyst, but also those kind of data scientists that do analytics.
Yep.
Let's put it all together in this bunch. These people we're gonna have to professionalize because their job is not to produce numbers anymore. Their job is going to be to consume numbers. And to do so, they're going to have to develop skills that until now were not as common among those people. So we need people with business sense.
Got it. It's a paradigm shift, really, right? The way you just described it. Yeah.
Yeah, because the kind of low quality work, low professionally work, that's going to disappear. So I think we don't need those people anymore. What we need is really people who can make sense of the business, people who are customer centric, people who don't get excited about the solution, but they get excited about the impact that they can produce with it.
Yeah, love it. So we're almost out of time. I just got one more question for you. We always kind of in the data center community, we like to talk about kind of the potential of machine learning and AI. Where is that going to take us in the future? And so I know you're involved in some machine learning, but when you think about AI, like what kind of impact is that going to have over the next decade? What do you envision as the major changes that we will see in our economies because of ML and AI?
Well, I am a little bit of a detractor. And nothing really changed in terms of AI, in terms of what can be done compared to 20 years ago. We are doing exactly the same things. We had predictive modeling before, we had classification before, we had anomaly detection before. And these are the three problems that machine learning can resolve 20 years ago and today.
Yep.
The truth is that there's a very limited amount of problems that are a good fit for machine learning. The only difference is that nowadays the technology got commoditized. So nobody could do machine learning before, and you need huge computers and mainframe and huge cost. Right now you can run models on your laptop. But in terms of what can be actually accomplished, we didn't really go a long way. And we are doing now, what are we doing? Churn prediction, and we're doing the same things that we were doing 20 years ago. So in my opinion, there is no such a thing as artificial intelligence. That's simply marketing. What we are doing is we are capable of producing some machine that reproduce some aspects of intelligence.
Yep.
They're not intelligence, it's math. It's basically virtually every single machine learning model is simply very much linear regression on steroids. That's what it is. It always works the same. I'm gonna, it's either probabilistic or it's frequentistic. But what I'm gonna do is taking some inputs and some outputs, then finding a model that basically stores the relationship between these inputs and these outputs. So I'm going to do a cost function, I'm going to minimize it, and that's what my algorithm does. A neural network is nothing else but many small regressions. So in my opinion, we are a very, very long way from achieving amazing things. If you're going to achieve amazing things, they're going to be in very, very specialized fields, such as within a Go game, within a chess game, but we are in my opinion, light years from achieving groundbreaking achievements that would be more requiring a general intelligence as opposed to a specific specialized intelligence as we start today.
And what's the gap? Is it a capabilities gap? Is it a compute power gap? Why are we so far away? What is it that we need, as kind of data scientists or just as business people to kind of make those leaps?
To me, I don't think computer power is a problem at the moment, based on my observation. And if that was true, then we would observe niches of people with access with a lot of computer power doing incredible things. But the truth is that you can see a video of a Tesla, they can't tell the light if it's green or red. We're still there, So power, no. To me, like what we need is a huge amount of creativity to come up with some ideas and some paradigms to look at artificial intelligence, which are completely different from the ones that we look at now. Because like these are it's not intelligence, it's math.
I love it. I love your perspective on it because I think it's a little bit, you are a detractor in some ways, but in other ways, it just brings it back to kind of, what is it that we're actually doing today? And there's a lot of people that, when you ask them what are they doing and they say machine learning, and then you say, no, what are you actually doing? We're doing linear regressions, right? So
that's a great one, because doing machine learning is not a thing. You're not
right.
doing machine learning.
Right.
Machine learning is not a thing that you do. Machine learning is one or many different technical solutions to resolve a problem.
Yep.
But the problem, again, is that there are very, very few things that machine learning is effective at doing.
Yeah. Well, this has been really enjoyable, Alessandro. I've kind of taken you past the limit here, so I want to thank you for your time on behalf of the Data Standard. We've really enjoyed the insights. And if folks want to get in touch with you to network and to just talk, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I would love them too. Please, I can talk about this for hours and days. Please reach out to me via LinkedIn. That would be probably the best thing to do.
Okay, fantastic. And we will include that link here in the video. So if people want to reach out, please do. Alessandro, again, thank you for sharing the time with us, VP of Data at Preply. And we look forward to seeing your future successes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time today.